30 seconds.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Vintage Motocross Q&A. I'm your host, Joe Abadi. Thank you, Jordan, Susie, and Chelsea for help putting the show together tonight, and thank you at home, the viewers who are watching. We've got something a little bit different for you tonight. You can call it a rewind show. Hi, everybody. Welcome to my first Facebook Live feed. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Abadi. I'm Joe Abadi, and I'm your host, Joe Abadi. I'm Joe Abadi. I'm Joe Abadi, and I'm your host, Joe Abadi. You're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A. Welcome to Vintage Motocross Q&A. You're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A. Vintage Motocross Q&A. Vintage Motocross. 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 Good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Abadi, and you're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A. You can call it a rewind show, sort of a best of segment, if you would. We've got some interesting things coming up, and we're going to be taking a look at them right now. In tonight's Next Time Try This segment, which is brought to you by Vitco, I want to talk to you live. We usually do it pre-recorded, but we're going to do it live tonight because I just got back from New Jersey really late last night, couldn't make a video in time, so I decided I was going to do something live for you today. Now, as many of you know, I restore a lot of gas tanks for people, aluminum tanks, Elsinore tanks, Husqvarna. Now, many people ask me when they call me, how should I ship the tank? What size box should I use? I don't want it to get damaged, and that's all very concerning, as it should be. And it's the same when I ship it back to them. But what people don't realize sometimes is an Elsinore tank maybe weighs 7 pounds. Same with other aluminum tanks, whether it's Suzuki's, Huskies, whatever it may be. A lot of guys will think, well, the bigger the box, the better, because they don't want their tank damaged. Well, are they right? Yes and no. Here's the best way to do it, really. You want to find a box like this, just a little bit bigger than your tank. You want to put that tank in there, wrap it in a nice soft t-shirt or a towel, then pack paper around it or bubble wrap if you have it. That's going to really secure the tank. But of course, you're worried about, is the box big enough to prevent the tank from being damaged? Well, that's the next thing we're going to talk about. The way I like to do it, the way I ship tanks back to people, is I put it in a box like that. Then I put it in a little bit of a bigger box like this. And you can see right in there where there's a few inches left on each side of that smaller box, where you can then pack it with bubble wrap. And with that, your tank is really, really going to be secure. It's not going to get damaged because you're going to have 2 layers of protection, 2 layers of the bubble wrap around it as well. But here's where you really benefit from it the most. You're not going to be charged as much when you go to ship it. Now, I don't care if it's FedEx, UPS, or the post office. They'll always get you on the size. They'll call it an oversized box. And when guys ship boxes, sometimes they'll ship me tanks in boxes. They'll put it in boxes twice the size of the tank, which is good, but it's costing them an incredible amount of money to ship it either across the country or from Texas or from Iowa or from wherever, because the box is so big. And I'm talking a sizable difference, like 50, 60, 70 bucks sometimes. Then they got to pay to have it go back too. If you do it the way I've told you to do it, with just a little bit of a bigger box over the tank, wrap it in a towel or a t-shirt, put some paper in there, get it nice and secure, then put it in a box that's about 2 inches bigger all the way around, and put your bubble wrap in there. That's the best way to ship a tank. It's not going to weigh anymore, and it's not going to cost you anywhere near as much as if you use a bigger box, because you do that under the impression that, well, it's bigger, it's got more packing, there's less chance of the tank getting damaged. That's true. However, you always get banged out for the bigger box size. So next time, try that. Thanks, Vinco, for being a sponsor of this segment. Don't get a box like that. This is a question I've been waiting to ask you. I can't tell you.
I didn't do it.
No, I know you didn't. No, actually,
I did do it.
You did do it. Everybody out there who's watching, I'm sure you've seen the picture many times of Jimmy Weiner at the Oakland Coliseum.
Oh, I did do it.
I think it's 1979. He's on a factory Kawasaki. He's got a neck brace on, and he's using this infamous paddle tire. It's a big deal. He's throwing sand every place it goes. Hannah's going blind. He can't see. Weiner runs the race. Every time we see this picture on the internet, there are all these, people think they have knowledge of what actually happened there. The paddle tire gave so much torque. Jimmy's neck was snapping back. Where did the paddle tire come from? Now, I know the answer to this.
Do you want to start with that, or do you want to start with the neck brace? Because that's before the paddle tire.
All right, let's start with the neck brace. Why did Jimmy have a neck brace on that day?
We were screwing around in the rent-a-car. Jimmy was driving, so no, I did not do that part.
Okay.
Jimmy was driving, and I had a ranch in Northern California with a motocross track with big hills. Anyway, Jimmy's the wheel man, he's pretty good at the wheel. So we're in the rent-a-car, and we come flying up. It's a dirt road, a mile dirt road up to where the ranch is, and it's a big hill. So Jimmy's going, how far do you think this thing will go up the hill? I go, I don't know, find out. So he goes up the hill as far as it goes until it's stuck. Then he turns around. Instead of just coming back down, he starts whipping it, side to side, and catches a cow trail or something. 7 snap rolls. I mean, we had a record beat Earnhardt for like 20 years. I mean, I'm serious. We had the record of snap rolls. And he was going 200 at Daytona, and we still got more. Anyway, so the roof is laying on the headrest. Jimmy's head's hanging out that little area, whatever it is. I was in the front seat, but I'm in the back seat with my pants ripped off. And we're calling, my dad's there and Lori's there, so they're calling an ambulance, and they come and they get him and take Jimmy to the hospital. I think he's got a broken neck and is probably dead. But he didn't have a broken neck, luckily, and he just had a bad sprain. So they put him in a neck brace. And this was, we came up for a press conference for that race, for the Oakland Coliseum race. Anyway, I don't think we went because he was hurt, and I was kind of had some injuries too. Anyway, so we go to the track day before, whenever they practice, and it was really.
Okay, so you get this tire from France because you're racing on the beach there.
I brought it back to the States with me because it was so cool, and I figured, well, Rio Vista's a sand place where I practice and stuff. I'd use it somewhere and have fun with it. Anyway, so I go look at the track with Jimmy because I didn't ride that time because I had a leg injury from that crash. And so I go, Jimmy, I got this tire. I think this tire would work here. Yeah, what is it? I go, it's a paddle tire. Nobody even heard about it over here. He never knew what it was. I didn't know what it was till 3 months earlier. Anyway, so I talk him into using it, which you can talk the jammer into pretty much anything. So anyway, he puts it on, and then history is like you said. He was killing Hannah. Hannah's screaming, crying, wanting to protest because he can't see, and the tire's so crazy. And they outlaw it after that night after he wins. But he had a neck brace because he crashed the car and flipped 7 times. And I gave him the tire that I got in Lot 2K, and he used it, and he won the race, and that's what really happened.
That's what really happened. So the next time you see that picture of Jimmy Weiner in Oakland with the neck brace, remember, the Ford LTD, Brad Lackey, doing the snap rolls.
Vinco, who already has a full line of vintage parts, now has air shocks that are an exact duplicate of the original air shocks so popular in the late 70s. So whether you're looking to build a full racer or museum showpiece, these shocks will give you that incredible 70s look and improve your bike's performance. These new air shocks are fully rebuildable with Vinco rebuild kits, and all shocks are hand assembled in the USA with all new components. Every component is brand new. Just like the originals, our air shocks are adjustable with 2 chambers, high and low pressure, giving you tremendous flexibility for settings of your bike suspension. The Vinco air shocks come fully assembled and ready for installation. Just add air or nitrogen. The kits include the manual and spacers. Visit Vinco.com to check out the air shocks and all that Vinco has to offer to help you get back on track and to keep that ride going.
We're at MMX in Marysville, California. I'm here with Jared Fisher, a guy that has been keeping vintage motocross going here in Northern California for a few years now. Jared, what's it like here this weekend? What's the event? What can we expect to see?
We got the ARMA Northwest Regional this weekend here. Got a hell of a vintage track out here today I put together for the boys, and I hope everybody has a wonderful time.
Just a few weeks ago at the Dave Coupe Classic. You were here for that also. How many events do you run a year?
For 21, I'm going to have roughly about 15 to 17 events, 3 of those being vintage, post-vintage events. We'll have the CZ World Championship. Maybe we'll be hosting the ARMA again, and then the Coupe Classic.
Now, how long has MMX been going on here?
This is my 11th year of business, and where we sit here, there wasn't a tree on this property. Nothing was here.
So you really upgraded the property a lot. You've planted trees, you've put gravel down. It's a great facility, and it looks like you keep the track real nice as well.
Yeah, we work real hard. I got an excellent crew, and everybody chips away at it, and that's what we continue to do. So got a bright future here, really working on some major improvements still to come. So,
Jared, thanks for hosting the race. Jared Fisher, everyone. If you get up to Northern California, MMX is where it's happening.
Right on, thanks.
If you were following motocross in the 1970s, the man I'm speaking to in just a moment, you're going to recognize his name. He was a factory Yamaha guy, raced at the same time as Bob Hanna and so many others. It's Danny Turner. Dan, thanks for talking to me today. Tell me about the vintage bikes and what's going to be happening out here tomorrow.
Oh, we're going to have a whole bunch of fun out here tomorrow, wrestling these bikes around. My bike is a 380 CZ and a 125 Rickman's Undap. And I'm looking forward to have some fun. This is my first ride back after my injury.
Well, tell us about the injury. What happened?
A little incident, and I did a collarbone, got a plate, and 7 ribs in one shot.
Now, Dan, I mentioned a minute ago that you were on the factory Yamaha team back in the 70s, but you also rode for a couple of other different brands. Tell us about those and the results you had back then. What do you remember about those days?
Oh, great days. I rode a lot of Bultaco, and then I progressed up into, I did ride Team Monarch with Marty and a bunch of other guys, and we did that big race at a Royal Cycle Park one year. I rode for Penton West, early 73, and then I went to Husqvarna and rode to Port Husqvarna in 74, 125 and 250. And I rode a Hercules, a little bit of Hercules.
That's what it was.
Yeah,
I was trying to think about, I remember the Bultacos and the Huskies and the Yamaha years, but I'm trying to think right now, and I get a little dusty too. I'm saying he rode something that was a little bit unusual. So you were on a Hercules for a while. How'd that ride come about?
Through Mike McGowan. I did a little bit of the 6-day qualifier rides on a Hercules, and that was an experience. It's not my style. Mm-hmm. Let me plug on this T&M Honda though.
Sure.
That was 75. I don't know if you remember, and I won the first moto at Hangtown, 1975. And so as that year went going, I hooked on with a guy that was part of D&G at one time, but he was working with Tim McCool for T&M. Mm-hmm. And so he put me on the nationals. That was the world's fastest privateer 125. And it was a rocket, and that's when I got the third in the 125 standings. And then the following year is when Yamaha signed me.
Danny Turner, he was there live back in the day that we all talk about. Dan, thanks for speaking to me.
There's only 4 different ones.
Are really old flyers?
Yes.
Ah!
Oh, I don't think I have that one. I don't think I have that one.
Pesties?
I have Pesties too.
Yeah!
I have that one. Well, I don't.
I ran into a friend of mine in the pits, Marty Lukachevsky, and I want to tell him that it's so good to see him. I only get to see him, it seems like at races. We just don't cross paths that much anymore.
Yeah, it's really great to see you too, Joe. And, when we met, I think it was 11 or 12 years ago when we both were living in Walnut Creek, and you moved out of a rental and I moved into it because we had a friend in common.
Yeah.
Anyway, I started racing a lot of vintage motocross after that. On and off through the years, I've gone through, spurts of a little of this and a little of that, but this is the kind of racing I prefer for a gentleman, and it's really great. I mean, everybody that participates in these type of events. Really, I mean, it's more camaraderie than it is competition, and that's what I like about it.
So tell me a little bit more about the bike you're going to be racing tomorrow. It's standing here behind me. It is a Mako 250.
No, it's a 440.
Okay.
And I've only had it a couple of years because I lost my last Mako in the Paradise Fire.
Oh.
So after that, I bought this one actually in the Russian River Valley area, and it was pretty much ready to race. I had to do a few little things to ergonomically, ergonomics for me is probably the most important thing. So having the correct controls and your brake and your shifting all set to where you're comfortable with the bike. But when I bought it, all I really had to do was put new tires on it. It had this kind of an amazing, very unusual chrome. I think it's maybe a Bassani pipe made in Italy back in 30 years ago, but it seems to work well. Works performance shocks, new Dunlop tires, and of course the classic Mako look with the aluminum tank and a taller seat. That's pretty much all I had to do to this bike, and it's a proven race bike, so it runs well.
What class will you be racing tomorrow?
I'm racing in the 60-year-old expert class, and it's a stacked class. You can trust me on that. Danny Turner, Pat Brown, those names come to mind.
Okay.
J.P. Morgan.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to be on the starting line with those guys. It's a real privilege.
It was so good to see you, and let's get together a little more often. Marty Lukachevsky.
Thank you. You think that's a Bassani pipe?
No. If it is, he made his pipes in America. He was Italian.
Oh,
I don't know.
makes a good story.
We'll never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yeah.
Oh, flaming! Throttle shot! Oh, thank God for that. That could have got over you right there.
We're at the MMX race facility in Marysville, California, and I'm here with one of the original members of the original standard motocross group. Daryl, how often do you meet here, and tell us what happens?
We meet here once a month on the third Sunday of the month, usually, and we try to do it every month, weather permitting, of course.
Now, is that just for vintage bikes?
Absolutely not. Although there are a lot of vintage guys in our club and post-vintage riders as well, we're a club that encompasses everyone, kids, modern bikes, everything.
Daryl Johnson telling us how it goes down here at Marysville. Thanks for talking to me, Daryl. My day wouldn't be complete if I didn't stop by and talk to my friend Siege. This guy has done it all from making t-shirts. His artwork is phenomenal. Plus, he put on the Hammer and Tong series for many, many years up in the great Northwest. Tell me more about the Hammer and Tong series. What were you doing up there, and how long did you do it for?
To squash a 75-hour story into 30 seconds. In 2000, Arma introduced bikes for after 75, but the West Coast guys didn't want to run them, and I understand why. And we wanted to run them, so we had an arm wrestling contest, and they said, start your own series. And we went, okay, watch this. And so we did.
Tell us about some of the shirts you made here for this event today.
When I do a T-shirt for a race, I try to always use a local person who is a deserving person. If it's someone that helped a lot or someone who is always there. It doesn't matter if they're fast or slow. It's not about stardom. So I try to get everyone on there.
I really admire that you've spread the goodness around as much as you can now. Probably, well, I don't want to say it is the most impressive, but yeah, it kind of is, because T-shirts are T-shirts, but your artwork that you have here today, original artwork that you've created, tell me about the inspiration for the Indian picture.
Well, I got invited down to be the featured artist at the Hand-Built show in Austin, Texas. And so I had done a lot of industrial work early on. And by work, I mean imagery, spark plugs and carburetors and things. And I was looking for a bike that wasn't your standard Harley or something, obvious. And I knew a guy who had a beautiful old restored Indian board racer. And so after I popped by to see him one time, I said, I should paint that bike.
Siege, thanks for taking the time to speak to me. I know you're a long way from home, but it was great seeing you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Siege. As you've seen from previous episodes, it is our quest, and we are continuing on that journey to replicate the 1974 RC 125 that Marty Smith rode to the inaugural 125cc National Championship. This week I want to talk to you a little bit more about the airbox. In previous episodes, we showed you the difference between a stock airbox and this feathery light fiberglass airbox that we had made. This week I'm going to show you a little bit more about the filter cage, how it all goes together, and it's going to fit in the frame. I'm going to put it all together right in front of you right now, and then we're going to get a shot of it in the frame. What I wanted to do was make sure everything fit properly before we put the thing together in its final stages. This air filter was laying in a bag. I had some oil on it, but it was just laying in there. We'll re-oil it when the time comes. The filter fit nicely in the cage. By the way, this filter happens to be from a Suzuki, and so is the filter cage. It all fit together real nicely, and it also comes with this wing nut with this long screw on it. You put that in, and inside the airbox itself is an aluminum flange that's molded in, and it's threaded. It's threaded, of course, to fit that wing nut. You can put the whole thing together. It all sits in there very securely. There you can see the filter from one side. It does fit in there really well. These two clamps that came with this other part, which is the air boot, the clamps are really nice. They're already plated with black zinc. The air boot is from actually a Mako, and we're going to need that because we're going to need some flexibility when we go to put our bigger carburetor on the back of that reed valve cylinder. So we discovered that a Mako air boot would work really well, give us a little flexibility when it comes time to putting that air boot over the back of the bell. That air boot fits on there real tight, real nicely. The clamp was absolutely a perfect fit. The other clamp, of course, we'll be putting into use once we get the carburetor in place. That's it for this segment of the 522 project. I again want to thank our sponsor, Full Circle Racing, for being a sponsor of this segment. This is the interview I've been waiting for all day. Gino, how does it feel to go from the Concord Poodle Rescue into being a celebrity on Facebook? In the Motor Showcase tonight, we take a look at a 1981 Kawasaki KX250. I'm sorry, it's an 82. This bike was sent to us by Jeff Kerr. He watches the show every week. He wanted to send a bike in, and I thought it would be a really, really great bike for the show. Jordan's going to go through the slides while I tell you a little bit more about it. Hi, Joe. I thought I would give you some information. It's not a showpiece, but I wanted to make this replica of a 1979 Weiner Trans USA bike. Eric Thomas of the Cow Shop did the motor, including the porting and polishing. All gears are cut 17 degrees on each dog for faster shifting. Oriental Suspension did the revalve and rebuild for the rear 81 shock. Weisco piston, Boysen reeds, and of course, Nightmare Plastic from our buddy Mark Hildebrand. It's got Tag Bars, Pro Motion Controls, RTR wheel anodizing, a present from my wife, Sarah. How nice. Nice. Homemade silencer from a 1990 KDX 200 and numerous other tidbits. But this bike actually flies. Joe, thanks for all you do for the Vintage Motocross Q&A community, and may God bless you. Well, God bless you, Jeff, and thank you for sending in that beautiful bike. It does look great, and for sending that bike in, I want to get you a mug just like this, compliments of Vintage Motocross Q&A and Preston Petty Products. Jeff Kerr, great looking bike. We're with Ed Sims, and we're taking a look at a 1966 CZ 250 twin port. Ed, tell me something. How long have you owned this bike? How often do you race it?
Well, I try to race it every chance I get. I've had it for probably about 10 years. And I rebuilt it, and then I had a great guy, Mark Alcorn, help me with it. And it's been a really fun bike just because you don't see that many twin ports.
So how many horsepower is this bike, and is it competitive against other bikes in its class, or is this one of the best bikes to have in that class?
Well, it's pretty fast. The Osas, the Lotos are in this class. They're very fast. It's probably even with the Husky 250, which back in the day, the CZ and the Husky were the preeminent bikes.
So Ed, tell me this: when you're not out racing vintage motocross, what do you do for a living?
Oh yeah, I'm a dentist in Sacramento.
A dentist from Sacramento with a 67 CZ 250 twin port. Ed, thanks for taking the time to speak to us today. We're at the York Swap Meet in York, Pennsylvania, and I wanted to give you an idea of what you can expect if you ever attend this great event. There was a wide variety of vintage bikes, including street, trials, dual sport, enduros, motocross, and minis. Vendor tables were sold out, with over 370 sellers packing the building with a variety of parts. The Potomac Vintage Riders had a great display, and the Penton Motorcycle Group, well, they had some bikes here that would truly blow your hair back. In the bike show, there was vintage MX bikes, street bikes, customs, three-wheelers. There was just about something for every vintage motorcycle enthusiast, including a very rare 1937 Scott Flying Squirrel, a two-cylinder, liquid-cooled, two-stroke rotary valve bike. Absolutely unbelievable. There were Wankels, a Jones Ice-Low, incredible Makos, and just about every manufacturer you can think of was represented. The York Fairground facility is really a first-class operation. It's well-lit, it's warm, it's spacious. It's just an inviting place for the whole family, and they've got a food court as well. I'd like to thank Bill Nazelrod, Mike Slate, Tom Grimmel, and everyone at the Potomac Vintage Riders for hosting such an amazing event. I'm really looking forward to coming back next year. In the expansion chamber tonight, that is brought to you by Full Circle Racing Limited, Fritz Gunther has sent in a video of a really great tip. Let's get a look at it right now.
Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. Another shop tip. When you're rebuilding your engines, these muffin tins, cupcake trays, they work great for putting all the parts in. As you pull your parts off the engine, you can start upper left, upper right, and just as things come off in order, you just put them in the muffin tins. They work great for that. Plus, if you take the old ones out of your wife's kitchen, then make sure you get her some new ones before you steal the ones that she uses. So, good way to get some points with the little misses. Also, these little squeeze bottles are available, Amazon, eBay. I forget what they call them. There's a name the lab rats call them, but I just put on the left, I've got, gear oil. I've got two-stroke oil. On the right, I've got some soap suds, which is, helps with tires. And also I use it for doing pressure checks on engines, looking for leaks. So just another little tip for you guys. Hope it helps. See you at the track.
Great tip from Fritz Gunther on how to keep your nuts and bolts organized in your shop, and a little marital advice in there as well.
Photographie en couleur. Pellicule Agfa Color 100. Agfa Color 100, la vie s'écrit en Agfa.
You're on the Dupla team, you're racing for CZ. You're able to go to other countries and race GPs now. However, you can't take your family with you. How did he get you to see some of the other countries that he went to in Europe?
So it is very complicated, and for anyone who never lived in socialism in the communist country, it is really hard to explain. It's really hard to understand. So traveling to the West was not allowed. Even under the Dukla umbrella, we still had to have special visa, special approvals to go, and then upon the return, we would have to fill forms. Who did we talk to? Why did we talk to them? How long and where and whatnot? So one of the things that really took out from us was traveling abroad to GPs, and instead of just cutting through Germany to France from one GP to another, we would have to trek back thousands and thousands of kilometers to renew visa to a different country, get an approval, and go there. So we lost a lot of time on the road just to get paperwork from A to B. It was a trip to France where they smuggled me and my mom covered with sleeping bags. That was after Dad left Dukla. After '84, he went private with Stodulka and Novacek, and they were on their own, so they were not risking the Dukla spot anymore. However, they were, risking their family. So what happened was we still had to get visas and documentation filled in for Falta, Novacek, and Stodulka to go race. But my mom and I did not get visa all the way to France. We only went to Western Germany. So Falta was traveling with mom and me. I was 4 years old. My mom was pregnant with my brother, and Stodulka was traveling with his wife and 2 kids. Well, when they made it across Germany, close to France, they saw that the border patrol is not really doing their job, or it was the middle of the night or whatnot. So they took a chance and say, let's play hide and seek, and they would cover pregnant mom in sleeping bags. I remember being in a stack of tires playing hide and seek with a blanket over me. I remember the blanket stank with gasoline. And so we were 2 cars, and Stodulka smuggled his wife and his 2 children to France, and we end up having a wonderful vacation in southern France for 2 weeks. And then they lost me there. So that was Parents of the Year.
And greetings all listeners.
Ciao.
Hi.
Ciao,
See you
ciao.
later.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Dale Carmine, what would you suggest paint or powder coat on a rebuild? Which would you choose for a race bike or a show bike? Does it reflect the value if I were to go sell this bike? This is becoming an age-old question, much like what should I mix my oil and gas at, or how much fork oil does my motorcycle take? Look, I look at it this way. Paint to show, powder coat to go. Bikes didn't come with powder coating when they were new. You're saying you're doing a rebuild here, Carmine. So what I would say is that you should powder coat the bike if you're going to go out and race it. It's not really going to hurt the price, because when you go to sell the bike, you're going to be selling it as a race bike anyway. So if it's powder coated, it's powder coated. It's going to last a little bit longer. It's going to look a little bit better. Some people will disagree. You'll hear a couple of different opinions on whether you should powder coat or not. I'm a big fan of it on race bikes. I've never had a problem with it. If it's going to be a show bike, you paint it. Race bike, you can powder coat it. It's not going to affect the price when you go to sell it. Thanks for sending in the question. Yeah, let me ask you a question. Who's in charge here?
It's Scott Burnworth. I'm here at the SoCal Vintage MX Classic. Have a great time. We have a huge turnout. We've got a lot of legends coming. We're doing a special Marty Smith tribute class. We're going to have a great time out here at Glen Helen, remembering a good friend in Marty and his wife Nancy. And we're going to have some fun vintage racing on a really nice track. Probably the biggest turnout we've had so far in 10 years. I want to thank everybody for coming out to the SoCal Vintage MX Classic. If you missed it, you definitely got to be here next year.
Thanks for watching Vintage Motocross Q&A. We'll see you next week. All right. What's your gangster? Tony Bender. That's where I know that name from. The Veloci papers with what's his name?
Chris Gion, I'm thinking Tony doesn't want it.
Oh,
So how many viewers did you have tonight?
What was the guy's name?